the primary reason that the 2009 master plan was non-viable, it was based on the economics, then what we need to do is to start off by identifying clear economic generation centers for a new master plan. And these are the areas that you can see listed from 1 to 8 here. And we've got the port. The idea was to move the port from its existing location here at Little Bay, to move that down to Cars Bay, to create a new waterfront town that would reflect the way in which capital towns on all Caribbean islands have evolved historically, i.e. at the waterfront and then expanding inland from there. The next thing that the group suggested was to put the resort hotel not on Potato Hill, as was suggested previously, but to put it down on the beach. That was based on the premise that people come primarily to the Caribbean for a beachside hotel experience, not a clifftop experience. However, they will come to the Caribbean to stay in villas that have good views. So it was decided to make good use of Potato Hill by putting villas up there. Once the port moves from Little Bay down to Cars Bay, then obviously we're left with a sizable facility there, and we need to do something with it. So it was suggested that that could be evolved into some smaller kind of marina or a yacht service center or something of that nature. We felt that the background area of the 2009 master plan, where the public buildings are around the cricket field, the museum, the social security, the cultural center here, and then the parliament and courthouse buildings in between, we felt that that part of the 2009 master plan was quite okay. So that was left untouched on here. Now, there was a lady representative of the diaspora from the UK that was invited to the review also, and she represented an architectural group that is interested in planning, designing, and investing in a biodiversity center somewhere within the Little Bay area. So at the charrette, the design review, it was proposed to put it on Dogger Hill. So that's number 7 you can see there, and that would be intended to be on Dogger Hill up behind the cultural center here. And then within this central area, so the number 8 is missing, but the recreational areas, that's basically from the cricket field here in the middle up toward the cultural center, this big flat area outside. It's intended to have recreational area because if we're having a living, breathing, working town, a proper town, not just a toy town where cruise ship passengers come in from 8 till 5, go away and the town closes down, but if we're actually having residents in the town, then they need recreational space. So it was considered that if the new town is going to be down here in the Piper's Pond area, that between there and the cricket field, this big flat area, we can make use of that for suitable family recreational area. So this was the sketch that was produced. And another nice idea that the group came up with was that since it's intended to be the new capital town of Montserrat, there should be something there for Montserratians to make them feel at home very early in the establishment process. So you can see we've got there the Evergreen Roundabout. That was a primary social focal point of Old Plymouth, and it was designed in here in order to create a new social focal point for Montserratians in their new hometown. Next slide, please. So during the course of this year, from January through to July, that sketch that you have just seen has gradually evolved into this working drawing. The port area, number 1 here, that is the responsibility of the Public Works Department. They have a separate set of consultants who are designing that, and that design is still being evolved. So what you see there is just a work in progress. However, the port does have to interface in what we're doing for the rest of the town. So we're very much interested in this part of the port area, the marina and the waterfront town. We consider that to be a major economic driver for Montserrat in the future. It's most likely that those waterfront properties, like other waterfront properties on marinas around the Caribbean, will be prime properties. They will bring in people in some nice yachts, and hopefully we'll get some good money spent here and generate an economy in the new town. Right by the number 2 there, this is intended to be the new town square. I'll show some pictures of that in a moment. But the rest of the items that you can see there are the same as the sketch. The one major difference is that it was decided that for the whole of this new area, Dogger Hill does make a nice dark green backdrop. So instead of putting the biodiversity centre there, it was decided to move it further to the southeast corner of the island, of the area. So number 7 has been shifted from Dogger Hill toward the back, adjacent to Davy Hill. Okay. Now, just to give some people a little bit more bearings, because these maps are not always that easy to see, I've just labelled it a little bit. So you can see this is the road that comes down from Braids. So we've got Gun Hill just here, next to the port. This little road that stops there, that's the road that goes into Delta, the fuel station. And then this is the bend where the road then goes on up to St. John's. Piper's Pond, Davy Hill, Potato Hill, those are all fairly clear to see. And then some other hills that I'll be referring to as we go further into the presentation. Benito Hill, that's the one right before the port. And then Dogger Hill, I say it's this hill right behind the cultural centre here. Next slide. Okay. And as I pointed out, the 2 key features within the town then, we've got the Evergreen Roundabout and the town square. Neither of these forms a particularly important traffic management function. They're intended mostly as circles in terms of a social function. So what I'm going to do now is to go through each of these points from 1 to 8 and give you a little bit more detail about them. I'll show a zoomed-in area of this master plan so that you can see them a little more clearly. And then I'll show some computer images to give you an indication of how the architect anticipates the new town is going to look like. One thing I want to do before we move on, since the 2009 master plan was done, people have seen various designs and sketches. There have been visits here from people representing large cruise ship companies. We have discussed quite seriously with those cruise ship companies that the number of tourists that we're actually able to cater for on Montserrat. And the thing is that even if we were able to get in these monster ships at Cars Bay, and just to give you a sense of scale, one of these ships is about 340 meters long. So that is the length from Gun Hill to Potato Hill. So it's the full length of Cars Bay. And it's 1.5 times the highest point on Potato Hill. Now, as you notice where we have been cutting down over the last couple of days, Potato Hill actually slopes off toward the seaward end. So the cliff height is only about 36 meters. This is 74 meters. So it's over twice the height of Potato Hill Cliff. It would just dwarf the new town. However, even if it was possible to get that in, these monsters carry... Sorry, back one, please. So these monsters carry about 5,000 or so passengers. And if you think about it, even if 2,000 of those passengers wanted to travel from the port area where they would arrive down to look at the MVO or other features around the island, if just 2,000 people wanted to travel, let's say we have a fleet of 20-seater minibuses, we would need 100 of them. 100 20-seater minibuses on our one little main road. So it was decided that really we cannot cope with this size of ship. And even if we tried to get into the larger area of tourism by trying to build other hotels around the island, we then tried to compete with the likes of St. Kitts, Antigua, and some of the other larger islands within the region. We felt that that's just impractical. Montserrat needs to carve out a niche of its own. So taking a realistic assessment of our landside infrastructure, it was decided that we will go for the smaller cruise ships, and I'll show some indications of the cruise ships that we're now targeting. It was decided that we will go for those smaller cruise ships, and we will look at both the port side and marina side infrastructure and the land side infrastructure commensurate with that number of tourists. Another thing I want to point out, some people have said that they would like to see the new town looking very much like some of the other colourful towns around the Caribbean. The one example that I put up at the top right corner there is Port Zante in St. Kitts. And I really don't think we want an architectural style like that. There's actually very little architectural control being provided there. So the design of each and every building is different. There's almost no control over the advertising standards, so there's big advertising hoardings everywhere, and it really just looks like well, a complete mess, in my own opinion. Within our group, as we've been working on the design for Montserrat during the course of this year, we have spoken with other people who've traveled extensively around the region, and they've said, If we want to make Montserrat stand out and make a name for itself in the future, it needs to have a distinctive architecture, one that people can relate to. When they see pictures of it, they will say, oh yes, that's Montserrat, and not get it mixed up with some other island. So it needs to have an attractive style that is comfortable for Montserratians to live in, but it needs to be distinctive for visitors. When your visitors come, they are your tourism ambassadors for the next wave of tourists. If they don't like the place, they're going to go back and say that. And most particularly nowadays with TripAdvisor and all the other social media, it very quickly gets out a bad message that people they just didn't like the place. So what we want to do is to actually create a welcoming experience, and we want to have a distinctive architecture where people will go back home and say, you have to visit Montserrat. So just talking a little bit more about the architectural style. This is the architectural style that our team have come up with. It may evolve slightly during the course of the detailed design, but if you can just press forward, please. I'm just going to compare this and one more. Okay, as I said, we don't want to repeat these styles. This is, again, Port Zante. I'm afraid it's not very clear with the lighting here. But what we wanted to do was to reflect something of Old Portsmouth. If you can just click one more time, please, David. What we've got here is a picture of Parliament Street down in Plymouth. And you can see that the arches, the walk-through areas, the wooden balconies over the top. And what we tried to do is to reflect that with a more modern and fresher feel of architecture in the new design for Montserrat's new capital. And as I said a moment ago, what we want is something that is attractive for residents, but distinctive for visitors. The general idea, as with the former buildings in Plymouth and elsewhere around the Caribbean, is that primarily on the ground floor there would be commercial properties. On the middle floors, that could be a mixture of commercial and residential, and then we will have primarily accommodation on the top floor of each of the buildings. Just to give an example of where this has been done somewhere else, this is Gustavia in St. Bart's. And you can see how the walk-through areas with the columns and the wooden balustrades, it's a distinctive architectural style. When people see that, they know that is Gustavia St. Bart's. And we're trying to do a similar sort of thing in terms of the architectural style for Montserrat. As I pointed out, we want to have a couple of social focal points in the town so that it's a place where Montserratians can feel immediately at home, but also a place where tourists or tourists and visitors can also have somewhere to socialize. This is a picture of the old Evergreen Roundabout from Plymouth. And one more time. And I'm afraid it's very difficult to see with this lighting, but this is just an indication of a social area. It's another roundabout with umbrella structures here, tables for people to eat and drink in the middle, and then the whole roundabout is surrounded by bars, restaurants, and cafes. And as I pointed out, those are the locations then of our two areas. If you can just click again, please. Right, so we're onto the marina area. As I pointed out, this is actually the responsibility of the Public Works Department. The design that has been produced by their consultants at the moment is this long offshore breakwater. They believe that the dominant waves come in from the northwest, which is parallel with this breakwater here. We've been quite insistent from our side that people who are sitting along the waterfront at the marina need to still be able to look out beyond this breakwater and see Redonda and Nevis. So there's a little tete-a-tete between ourselves and the port designers at the moment. As I say, this is a work in progress. It's something that's evolving. They are now beginning to look at one or two alternative designs. But this is our artist's impression of how we would like the port area to look. Whether it has some sort of breakwater just out here, that will depend upon the port design consultants. At the far top right there, those are just an indication of port buildings. They may or may not look like that eventually. It's just something that our architect put in quickly as a sort of placeholder. In front of that, the large ship, that could be, for example, the docking station for the inter-island ferry. And then we'll have an array of other pleasure vessels within the main marina area. So just to give you some bearings, that's the intended port area. The other side of the road from there is where the Delta fuel station currently is located. And then behind these buildings in the middle, that's where the road would come up and then going up to St. John's. So this is basically all along the waterfront of Cars Bay. Just to give you a zoomed-in version of that, so you can see the buildings a little bit more clearly. The idea is that possibly people who are taking up residence on the middle floor or top floors there, they'll be able to look out over where their boats are moored. And then right at the far end here, so that this would be at the end, right at the base of Potato Hill, looking back along Cars Bay, looking south along Cars Bay. The idea is that in front of the marina we would have a boardwalk area, and then all the cafes, shops, and perhaps duty-free premises along the frontage there. And I say that this is the sort of target market that we're aiming for now. The port is going to be designed for cruise ships up to about 275 meters long. Theoretically, that could be vessels that carry passengers up to about 3,000. But our initial target is just a few hundred. One of the significant differences about this type of cruise ship is that unlike the large cruise ships that I showed on the earlier photograph, where the ship itself is really the destination, I mean, these days, those large ships on board, they have cinemas, they have ice rinks, they have water slides, they have climbing walls. So the cruise ship is very much the destination itself. With these, the people are more intent in actually looking at the islands where they stop. So this is what we're targeting. Our market research shows that the individual passengers on these type of vessels, they get off, they're more interested in going and looking at the sites and the attractions and the history and archaeology of the various destination islands, and they consequently actually spend more money on island. Just to show that it's not too aspirational to hope that we can get those vessels here. The top right-hand corner, that's Sea Dream. That's already visited here twice within the last couple of weeks. And this is Windsurf, one of the Windstar fleet of ships, and this passed here just last Sunday morning. So we're putting together at the moment a cruise ship prospectus to enable us to go out to these cruise ship companies within the next few months and to make a stronger case as to why Montserrat should be put on the itinerary for these cruise ships in the coming years. Zooming into the town area now. Again, these circles give good bearings. This is our Evergreen Roundabout. This is the cemetery just at the corner of the Cars Bay Road as it goes up to St. John's. And then this is the proposed new town square. This would be the heart of the town. So you can imagine something like that Evergreen Roundabout, the original Evergreen Roundabout, being replicated here. We've identified the type of ficus tree that existed in the old Evergreen Roundabout, and one of the same type of trees still exists in the garden at Ulverston House. So we've obtained permission from Sir George Martin, and we're actually taking a graft from that tree so that when we reconstruct our Evergreen Roundabout, we'll be able to put the same tree in there and get a nice big shady evergreen tree. Okay. I said that the social heart of the town, the town square, this is intended to be a circular area with umbrellas, tables and chairs that be shared by the cafes, bars and restaurants around. Okay. And this is the actual design that our architects have come up with, the same picture that was on the opening screen this morning. Okay. And this is what it would look like during the daytime. It's actually a bit better with this lighting to see. So we've got the sort of tables and chairs under the umbrellas in the middle there. The general intention then is around the town square we can have little coffee shops, restaurants, bars, maybe an ice cream parlor, and then the people can take their food from there and then share it and socialize in the circle in the middle. The town square that we've just looked at is then to the left of this picture. This is what we're calling the main street. So this is looking with Potato Hill behind you. This is looking south. And the big tree that you can see sticking out at the end there, that would then be the ficus tree at the new Evergreen Roundabout. So just to give you some bearings here, this is meant to be primarily a pedestrian area, so people can walk through little alleyways between the main street and the waterfront, which is the other side of the buildings you see on the right-hand side there, or they can go through little alleys here and come out at the town square. So the view that we were just looking at there, it was in this direction, looking down the main street here. As I pointed out, the dark green tree would be at the Evergreen Roundabout there. The buildings we saw on the right-hand side of that previous shot were these here. So the other side of there, we would have the marina and waterfront. Okay. In terms of our progress to date in constructing that, if you can click one more time, please. Okay, within the ellipse that I have shown there, that's where we're starting to cut down the end of Davy Hill in order to create the evergreen roundabout. And again, please. And again. Okay, what I've tried to do now is to superimpose over the top of the photograph the basic town layout. So this would be block 1. This is the circle that you just saw, the town circle on the previous slide. And again, please. Okay, this would be block 2. And just click through a few of them, and you can gradually see how the blocks would build up through as far as block 6. Okay, so this is then the main street. You can see that's more or less along the beach. We've got then one row of houses, and then we'll have to reclaim some land along here. It looks like from this photograph that the town is actually going to take up the whole of Carr's Bay, but that's just the foreshortening. It's a perspective of the actual photograph. You can see that the end of block 5 there aligns pretty much with where the light green old lime office is, the caravan there, which is about halfway along the cemetery area. So that's the extent of the waterfront town, from the base of Potato Hill to about halfway along the cemetery area. So we're going to have to create a seawall there. The marina will then be out in water of about 3 to 5 meters deep. From here, so we've got the main street, the evergreen roundabout, the town square, and then this is the existing road that goes on up to the marketplace outside and into the rest of the Little Bay area. And again, please, David. Okay, the port would then be at the back there. There's current consideration being given by the port design consultants as to whether to cut down the end of the gun hill that we see there and to create a bigger area, a larger area for the port. That would put the port further south, thereby giving us more space for our marina and waterfront town, thereby also creating more economic activity in the new town. Okay. And again, please. Right, looking at the town from a different perspective, if you're looking at it, for example, from where we are here, looking back down Piper's Pond, so in the direction of the red arrow, that red arrow is pretty much where the War Memorial is at the moment. And all of this area is then Piper's Pond. We've got Potato Hill down here. Again, please. And that's pretty much the view that we have at the moment. During the course of this year, around about September, we took out the manchineel trees because our surveyors were working within this area. They were getting burns from the manchineel trees, so we took the decision to take out the manchineel trees and make it a safer area to work. Once we took out those manchineel trees, the only area of mangroves and reeds and like a wildlife reserve was a small area that you see in the middle of the picture there. We then had this large open area, and we decided that the waters that are coming down from the storm drain at the back of the market, and they come underneath the bridge here, they were just coming out and basically silting up within the Piper's Pond area. So we took the decision to create an earth drain around the base of Potato Hill and out into the sea. That has been cut at an appropriate width and level so that you get areas of standing water like you can see here. And at times of higher seas, the seawater will come in from the bottom end, thereby creating the sort of brackish water that the mangroves thrive on. We've been working with the Department of the Environment over the last couple of months as well. They have taken small mangrove shoots from the main area there, and they have transplanted them within the drain area, so that over the next couple of years, as we start to construct the town, the area within the earth drain and the mangrove reserve will start to evolve and mature. And so by the time the town is completed, we'll have a nice mature botanical garden along the back of the town. Thank you, David. Okay, if you can just click through a few here. Again, what I've got here is I tried to superimpose the different blocks within the town. The first 3 blocks here, 7, 8, and 9, those are at the moment unallocated. We've not designed those. But if you can click one more time, please. Okay, block 1, that's the first block. That again is the one where the town square is. So that's the one we're going to be starting work on next year. Block 2 just starts to go around the corner toward the Evergreen Roundabout. And then blocks 3 and 4 we can just see out at the waterfront as well. So the marina, you just click one more time. The marina would then be out beyond blocks 3 and 4 at the seaward end. Thank you. Moving on to Potato Hill, you can see that we've been doing some work here in the last couple of weeks. The general intention here is that the roundabout outside here is just off the top right of the picture there. So the road that would be cut in, there'd be a small gatehouse at the bottom there. The road comes in along the edge of Potato Hill out toward the seaward end where there would be a turning circle. The intention is that we could probably put a spa in the middle there and then a clubhouse right out on the end. So we'd have a wonderful spot for a clubhouse with views out towards Redonda, Nevis, and some fantastic sunsets that Montserrat enjoys. And then around the periphery, we'll have some residences. There's design for an area of about 20 residences around the periphery of Potato Hill. And to give you an indication of what that looks like currently, these are an indication from our architect as to how the buildings may look. This gives it a sort of a plantation-style architecture, all timber buildings. We don't yet know how the buildings will look on Potato Hill, but this is just one possible solution. And as you will have seen coming in this morning, we've started to cut the track. So to give you the bearings, somewhere around about down here, this is where we would intend to have the security building. The track then goes up over the hill toward the seaward end, where we will have the spa and the clubhouse. Around the periphery here, and on this side, there would be the residences. Okay. Now, if you decide to venture up there, there is a lot of manchineel trees. So please do take care when you go up the track. I've placed just yesterday a sign saying beware manchineel. So it's actually on the edge of the track, and immediately after that sign you will see the manchineel trees. So if you do decide to go up there and take a look at the work that we've been doing and have a look at some of the views that will be enjoyed by the clubhouse and the future residences, please do take care because of the manchineel trees. This is our artist's impression of the clubhouse. As I say, it would overlook the cliff at the seaward end of Potato Hill. So this is meant to be the cliff sort of going down toward the sea. The Potato Hill does drop off toward the end there. It sort of slopes off. So as you can see here, we would have a tiered structure to the clubhouse and the club facilities. This is the current view. This is right at the end, and as I say, you can see that it does drop off toward the seaward end. It's not very easy to see with this lighting, but Redonda is just back in there, and on a clear day, of course, you can see Nevis right behind there. So for a clubhouse, it's a spectacular location. Okay. Down on the beach at Little Bay, this is where the hotel is intended. The main building would be here. So the cricket square is off to the left here. So the main building and the entrance area for the resort would be here. And then you have the accommodation wings down left and right from there going down toward the sea. Now all beaches in Montserrat must remain public. So the decision was taken to move to locate the hotel as far back as possible, so that what we will do in effect is to double the depth of the beach and therefore give more space for people. That's an important consideration when you think that Cars Bay Beach is going to be lost. That will be the new waterfront and the port. So by doubling the beach area here, we're somewhat compensating for that. Okay. Now the hotel hasn't been designed, but this is just one of our architects' artist impression. It gives an idea of the main buildings being tiered down toward the beachfront and having accommodation wings down either side. So this is just one possibility. And in terms of the progress we've made today, this is a photograph I took earlier in the week from Potato Hill looking down across the beach. The new beach area would extend back to about here, as shown on the previous drawing. Right back over here, adjacent to the road by the cricket area, this would be the entrance area for the hotel, and then the accommodation wings would come down either side. So just to give you an indication of the area, click one more time. The discussions we've had with potential investors at the moment, we have at least one investor who's interested in building up to 100-key hotel there, a 100-room hotel. We spoke with another investor who's actually interested, maybe not in a single 100-room hotel, but two smaller boutique hotels of about 50 or 60. So the final configuration would obviously be subject to measurement of the area and what could be fitted in there suitably, and the desires of the successful investor. Up at the north end of Little Bay, this is the existing jetty and the port building. The big grey square there is the port building. This is the existing jetty. And once the port operations, the commercial and industrial operations, are moved from Little Bay down to Cars Bay, we obviously have to think what we're going to do with the existing facilities. So it was our architect's suggestion that we could develop this into some sort of a yacht center, either a storage area. It would require some breakwater coming out here in order to protect those vessels. We're also intending to provide a fisherman's village with protection for the fishing vessels, and then a marine village, which is already under construction. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is our architect's impression of how the marine village may look. 4 attractive beach huts along the waterfront there, with or without this jetty, so it provides a facility for the fishermen to offload it as well. And in terms of our progress to date, you'll see that the new washroom area, we've got ladies' washrooms at the back, gents this side, with external shower areas as well. We had hoped that these would be completed before the start of festival, but we're pretty close to it. This could still be open within the next week or so. Now, on the other side of the road leading into the port, are on the periphery of Bonito Hill. When we spoke with one of the investors back in May this year with regard to potential investment in a hotel at Little Bay, he said he would need something in addition. When you invest in a hotel, it's actually quite a long-term return on investment. You pay up front for the hotel. For a hotel of the standard that we're looking at there, for 100 rooms, when you take into consideration all the landscaped areas, all the common areas, it works out on average to about $500,000 per room. So a 100-room hotel would cost about $50 million in terms of upfront investment. An investor would therefore look at ways in which he could speed up his return on investment. One such way of doing that would be for him to build some condominiums, and then his margin between what it costs him to construct these and sell them, that would offset some of his upfront costs for the hotel and therefore make the whole deal attractive. So that's one of the considerations we have there at the moment. This is our architect's impression of how those condominiums around Bonito Hill may look. And then elsewhere around the site, I said that this sort of recreational area and public buildings. The museum is constructed. That was opened earlier this year. Social Security building already underway since July. The Cultural Centre, just to give you bearings of where we are. We're playing around with different ideas for this recreational area. Whether we have a small swimming pool there and then maybe a couple of tennis courts, basketball court and various kiosks and refreshment facilities, that remains to be seen, the eventual arrangement here. One idea is that we may have like a junior competition pool. That would be a 40-meter long pool if there's sufficient interest in Montserrat, for example, in developing a junior international team. Again, I apologize for the lighting here, but I just wanted to show a couple of pictures of what's actually going on in terms of the public buildings at the moment. As I say, the National Museum, bottom right there, that was officially opened by Prince Edward earlier this year. I think it was in March this year. And the Social Security building is due for completion later next year. The Biodiversity Centre, as I say, the original intention was to put that at Dogger Hill at the back here. But as we started to get into the more detailed design, we determined that a better location for it would be over at the back of the site there, in the southeast corner of the Little Bay area, up against the Davy Hill. And this is the artist's impression provided by the group that intend to invest in this facility. We've already received a letter of intent from this group, so provided that the master plan that we have up there goes ahead in the style and extent that we have determined, then they said that they will invest in the Biodiversity Centre. So this is one area of successful investment they've already secured. Myself and one of the team, we went to Miami in in May this year. On the 6th and 7th, there was a two-day conference. It's an annual conference called the CHRIS Conference, C-H-R-I-S, which stands for the Caribbean Hotel, Resort and Investor Summit. As I say, it's an annual event that brings together islands from around the Caribbean who have projects like ours that they want to present and promote, and it's an opportunity to meet interested investors. At the end of this event, that's when we were approached by the two investors that were interested in either the 100-room hotel or the 50 or 60-room boutique hotels that I mentioned earlier. In terms of further investments, just last week we had an investor representing a group that gets involved in integrated destinations of port and hotel resorts. They invest in design, build, and operate of these facilities. He was very impressed with what he saw. He liked the new master plan. He said he would not make any changes at all to our landside operations. He just had some concerns about the current layout of the port. So he's gone back to the United States on Thursday last week. He's discussing the layout of the port and the opportunities there in more detail with his technical team. And all being well, we're expecting a letter of intent from that gentleman and his investment group before Christmas this year. Now, while all that's been going on, we've also been busy promoting our project internationally. We've got the project promoted in some regional magazines. The big one here with the butterfly that actually went in August into a European economic and investment magazine. They wrote up some very nice articles about this being the right time to invest in Montserrat, that Montserrat is basically turning the corner from its recovery process post-volcano into redevelopment. The Caribbean Property Investor, they've got a new issue coming out next week, and there's some new articles on Montserrat. I think it's 3 articles on Montserrat in that magazine. And then we're finding our way into other magazines as well. Cocoa Trade, that is a regionally based magazine, but it covers luxury villas and hotels worldwide. It comes out quarterly, and each quarter they have a theme on a different area around the globe. They were doing I think it was St. Lucia recently, and our architect who's been doing the master plan is from St. Lucia. He put us in touch with these people. So in the current edition of Cocoa Trade, there is another small article also about Montserrat. And they intend to come back to us next year and write a larger article going into more detail about our design and master plan intentions. Okay, we can, oh yes, sorry, just go back one please. One thing, I put the note down here to remind me. Just yesterday, we had an email from a company in England that makes educational films for children between the ages of 14 and 18. They put that out over the various TV networks, including American, European, and Australian networks. They're educational. They also put it out with people like National Geographic. And the idea that they have in mind is to come and look at what happened during the volcano period on Montserrat and what arrangements we're making in terms of our redevelopment process. So these people are likely to be on island in early February next year in order to make a film about what we're doing with the construction and development of the new town for Montserrat. I was also approached in March this year by 2 ladies who are very interested in investing in a hotel somewhere within the Little Bay area. That would be in addition to the main hotel down on the Little Bay beach. They have in mind to do something more of a sort of a eco-tourism style. They're considering maybe it would be in Rendezvous, or it may even be at the end of Davy Hill there. They've not yet decided on the location, but they have already given me a letter of intent. So this is another area of success for us as well in terms of securing investment in our master plan. And in terms of getting further investment, what we've been able to conclude over the last couple of days is some reservation agreements. So at the end of the presentation today, we can take you out, if you're interested, take a little walk around the town area and explain to you in more detail the layout of the new town. Within our MDC offices, we have the detailed plans for Block 1 and Block 2. And you can see that there are 3-story buildings throughout in Block 1. In Block 2, which is the left-hand side of the lower photograph, it's a mixture of 2- and 3-story buildings. But there's an opportunity for people during the festival period to start and place a reserve on units in these 2 blocks. So that concludes the presentation. So before we have a guided tour around the town, if there are any formal questions, I'd be happy to answer them.